We're back, everybody.
We are back. We are back. We are back. Last week sucked. My family got a really bad bug.
Oh, yeah?
I thought I was going to die.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was like probably the sickest I had been in a very long time. Not a good time. But we're back. We've got a nice cold beer today. It is a Fantasia Hazy IPA from Mother Earth Brew Co.
I hope out there's some type of alcoholic that drinks beer with us while he listens to our show.
Me too. I hope that most people that listen to us are having a nice cold beverage, even if it's not alcoholic. But alcohol is much funner.
I said an alcoholic.
Oh, you're specifically. I hope there's an alcoholic somewhere out there that's listening to our show.
Didn't say someone that drinks Britain. Drinks alcohol. I said specifically
an alcoholic.
Someone who has a problem.
Well, I'm sure there is, Cleet. I'm sure there is.
Somewhere out there.
Have you watched any new movies? I'm always curious about these new movies that you watch.
I haven't watched a goddamn thing.
Oh, okay. So just sitting here in your house all by yourself, alone?
Final Fantasy Rebirth came out, and I've been playing that.
Ooh.
It's a lot of fun.
Never got into those games. Never did. We watched a movie last night. It wasn't good. It was called Damsel. It was brand new on Netflix. It's like it switches the roles of like damsel in distress, and she's a sacrifice to a dragon. It wasn't good.
Yeah. I don't have a Netflix subscription anymore.
Oh, you got rid of it, huh?
I don't have any. Yeah, I don't really have anything at this point. At least, I don't know.
That's
it seems
dark.
like the movie quality has just gone like worse. Like with Netflix, almost every streaming service just seems like shit. Just a bunch of shit that they throw out there.
Yeah, you liked the Avatar cartoon though, right?
Oh yeah, I like that.
They did a live action show on Netflix. It's actually reviews are doing okay. I mean, you're not going to get close to the cartoon. Like, you never will.
I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not gonna do it.
But it's not M. Night Shyamalan bad. I never watched it because I never really got into Avatar.
Let's just not bring in.
I was going to say,
I'm already.
I just
want to
watch you.
already.
I'm just going to watch you shaking
God
your steering at the M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Speaking of M. Night Shyamalan, though, his daughter's actually making a movie. It looks pretty interesting. It's called The Watchers. You should watch the trailer. I don't think you'll watch it because you hate the Shyamalan family, I'm assuming.
Probably.
But it looks pretty good.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
All right. Whatever.
Is it about the Watcher, though?
No.
The guy who was watching that family that moved into the New York house?
But there's a show called The Watcher about that.
All right.
And it's the same guy who did, like, Haunting of Hill House and all that stuff.
I come from a lineage of Watchers, and we've been watching your home for generations.
I don't know why his name is escaping me right now. Jesus Christ. Anyway, he's good. Midnight Mass, you should still watch it. You should still check it out. But we're going to be jumping through some scary stories. Actually, the scariest true stories that people know online. Also, fun fact, we're really, really, really close to the Clown Motel. 21 subscribers away now, and then we're going to be trekking out to Nevada. We're getting our camera. It's already like on order.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. So we're going to learn how to film and edit, and then you guys can see our very hideous faces.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, subscribe.
Helps us get out there. 21 away, and then we're going to be out to Nevada. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump through some of the scariest true stories that people know.
I grew up in a funeral home. I helped out in the office. When I was about 15, we got a call from a man whose wife and infant baby had been murdered in cold blood. There were very few clues. It made headlines. Cops set up surveillance at the viewing. It was heartbreaking, as the mother was holding the baby in her arms. I was asked to take the flower cards and periodically get the husband and ask if he recognized the names. I then photocopied them and put them back. I did it because I was a kid, people knew me, and I was unobtrusive. I talked to the husband quite a bit. He seemed devastated and shaken. The cops told me they had an eyewitness to someone leaving the house the day of the murder. The witness was a 3-year-old girl. She recognized the man leaving. It was the husband's best friend. Turns out the friend and the husband had made a pact to kill each other's families and run off with their secretaries. What? The little girl identified the friend, and I guess one of them cracked. They both went to jail on multiple counts, all on the testimony of a 3-year-old girl.
Oh.
I couldn't believe that to this day, that man stood right beside me multiple times, and I had no clue. I don't think I ever looked at life the same way after that. That's crazy,
Jesus Christ.
Let's just kill each other's families and marry our secretaries.
All right, this is from Belai437. My great aunt woke up in the middle of the night. She heard her dog making these low growling sounds. She was single at the time, living alone in her ranch-style home. She walked out to her living room to check things out. She didn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary, so she decided to make sure that her door and front windows were locked. Door was locked. First window she checked was locked. When she lifted the mini blind on the second window, it was wide open, and a guy in a ski mask was standing there. Oh. She said he laughed this evil laugh and said, "Party time!"
I'm not going skiing.
Then he started to climb in. She screamed that she had a gun, and her dog started barking his head off. The would-be rapist decided to bolt. My aunt did get a gun after that and learned how to use it. I can't even think about what would have happened if she hadn't had her dog to warn her.
Fucking party time. What
Who said, like, what kind of fucking call sign is that? It's party time!
All right, this one is from Mordenti. Everything to do with Hajj Muhammad Masfiwi. He was a shoemaker who lived in Morocco in the late 19th and early 20th century. He and his accomplice, a 70-year-old woman called Anna, used to drug and kill young women who came to the shop. Eventually, one of the victim's parents traced her movements to the shop, and after the remains of 36 mutilated corpses were discovered nearby, Masfiwi and Anna were questioned and tortured. Anna didn't survive, but Masfiwi confessed to murdering them, usually for a tiny amount of money. His initial sentence was crucifixion, a very unusual punishment even then. However, there were many protests from powerful foreign embassies, and Morocco couldn't do much against them. Instead, he was sentenced to beheading, a more common punishment. However, the mood of Marrakech was that this was far too lenient, so they settled on emirment, being walled up alive. What?
Ooh, God.
I sort of have issues with them torturing him and then he gets a confession. I mean, that seems a little sus to me.
Yeah.
But anyways, a special cell was constructed in the wall of the bazaar, about a 2 by 2 by 6 feet. Chains were attached to one of the walls to ensure that he would be kept standing. Masfiwi wasn't told of his fate until the morning of his execution, when he was led, screaming, in chains and slowly bricked up inside. Once the last course had been laid, the crowd would fall silent until he started screaming, when they would cheer. He screamed nearly constantly for 2 days. On the third day, he fell silent. What the fuck, dude? That's crazy.
This comes from Sida Tickle. I've told this story before. I'm an eye doctor, and I had a patient come to me with an infected eyelid. 2 other eye doctors had tried to treat and had failed. They were dumping all sorts of medicine into it, and it wasn't getting any better. At this point, it was swollen and painful for weeks with no improvement despite being on tons of medication. Apparently, neither of them thought to flip the lid upside down. You know that gross trick some kids do with their upper eyelids? It was a painful maneuver for her very swollen eyelid, which might explain it. Anyhow, there appeared to be what looked like a visible abscess inside the tissue with thick, gooey material. I thought I'd give it a nudge and saw it move. This wasn't an abscess, it was something else. I managed to remove it... What?
Spiders.
Close. I managed to remove it quite easily in one whole piece. It was a fly larva.
Oh.
The patient told me that she had a bug hit her eye a few days before she got this infection. I removed the larva, and within 2 whole days the wound closed, and she was 100% recovered on basic antibiotic eye drops. Yes, I do have the photos from this case for those who are interested.
Maggots.
Are you interested, Cleet?
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Nope.
That's crazy, man. A bug fucking laid an egg in her eyeball?
A bug's life, man.
Yikes.
All right, this one is from Wex52. I had a guy tell me a story a couple decades ago about how he was hiking in an area in South America and wandered away from other hikers in the area. The ground was wet, and without warning, it gave away, and he got sucked into a fast-moving underground river, pitch black. What the fuck? Anyways, he was completely submerged and at the mercy of the current as it buffeted him against the sides of the tunnel. After some time, the current subsided and he realized he was in a larger pocket, still pitch black and submerged. He said that even as he struggled to hold his breath, he didn't panic and realized that the water had to keep moving somewhere. So he moved around until he found another tunnel that sucked him in. It would be hard for me to do that. At one point, he began to see light, so he punched upwards, broke through the ground and pulled himself out soaking wet, gasping for air, and a bit of distance from the other dry hikers who were somewhat bewildered when they saw him straggling up to them, just like soaked.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, that's scary. That would be a bad way to go.
Okay, this is from Kilroy Khan. The Franklin Expedition. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 British sailors and military personnel on 2 ships embarked on a mission to find the Northwest Passage from the Atlantic across the Pacific through Arctic waters. The ships, named HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, 2 former warships reclassified as icebreakers thanks to their sturdier builds, departed British waters in 1845 and were never seen again. In subsequent rescue attempts and investigations, it was discovered that quite possibly everything that could have gone wrong on the expedition did so. Every little thing that could go wrong went wrong. That sucks. I feel like you have those days sometimes.
That's my life.
Right? The weight of the ships, with their reinforced hulls and decks designed to fire mortars and cannons off, worked against them, as much of the waters crossed were shallow and filled with rocks and icebergs. Then the time chosen to launch the expedition occurred at one of the coldest Arctic periods in recent history, meaning the polar ice, and particularly ice pack, didn't melt like usual as the ships became locked in the frozen water and essentially experienced an endless winter for over 4 years. The food they stored, which was supposed to last 4 years, thanks to the revolutionary new process of canning, was bought at the lowest bidder. Much of the food was improperly sealed and spoiled, leading to food poisoning, and even the ones that were properly sealed and kept intact were riddled with lead, thanks to the soldering used to keep the food inside fresh. In conjunction with the lead pipes in the ships the men would have been drinking out of for years meant the entire crews of both ships were slowly being infected with all manner of diseases, namely botulism, scurvy, and heavy lead poisoning, which also affects the mind, leading to memory loss, heavy paranoia, and general mental deterioration, combined with already present tuberculosis that killed a small number of the crew before departing to the Arctic. Man, they had everything go wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
After about 2 to 3 years stuck in the ice, the captain in charge of the voyage, John Franklin, and many other crew members died in unknown circumstances, and the remainder decided to abandon ships and try and hike out together to the nearest trading outpost in Backfish River in Canada, hundreds of miles away, by loading up their rowboats with supplies and fixing them on sleds to be pulled. All remaining crew perished on that journey. The remains discovered by local Inuits and Netzilik tribes, who described desolate campsites of skeleton-like corpses with hazily built, half-open tents and even human body parts in cook pots, heavily implying that the men resorted to cannibalism in their last desperate hours.
There's a foot in that pot.
I remember they did a show on that on AMC called The Terror. It's called The Terror. It was really good, but they did a spin that like it was like a Yeti. Like they got stuck in the ice and there was like a Yeti following them.
Goddamn Yeti.
It was actually pretty good. It was okay. It was a while ago.
This one's from Prickly Heat. I served a short stint as a fireman. There was an RTA call one morning, 30 minutes after I started my shift. This guy got T-boned while driving home after a night of heavy drinking. He got T-boned on the passenger side when he ran a red light. His wife died instantly and he pretty much remained unharmed. When we arrived at the scene, he was outside the car, while his wife was still seated in the passenger seat. Her lower body was still in her seat, while her upper torso, splayed over the driver's side, looks like she was just reaching over to the driver's side to open the door. Just that she's unconscious and non-reactive. No blood at all from what we can see from the driver's side. The passenger's door was caved in badly. The driver was still tipsy and thought nothing of what's happening. Kept asking us to hurry up and extract his wife so that they can head back home, laughing and fumbling around with the police. Uh-oh. When the paramedics realized that there was no pulse, we tried extracting her from the driver's side, and we realized that her lower left body, her left pelvis, and her thigh was completely crushed, and she was impaled through her left abdomen by a piece of the door. When we told him that his wife has died, probably bled out in minutes after impact, you could see the disbelief, stop kidding me, slowly morphing into realization, then ending up as desperation. He was immediately sober and ran over to the driver's side, tried to pull his wife out, and tore her wound up, and we had to drag him out. He then proceeded to the passenger's side and tried to pry the cave door open. We left the scene then and let the police handle the aftermath. Saw it on the news that afternoon. Damn.
That's crazy. All right, this is from Half Yellow, Half White. Happened to my boss's best friend when they were around 17 years old. Best friend's parents were out of town one weekend, and she had the house to herself. Hell yeah, brother. Went about her business, having dinner, watching TV, then decided to go to bed. She's lying in her bed with her back to her closet when she heard the door open. She somehow pretended to be asleep, now that the closet door opened, not the front door, mind you. The man, who was hiding in the closet, walked around her bed to the side that she was lying and facing, gently stroked her hair and her face, and then left. She immediately called her boyfriend, asking him to come over, then called her parents, and then the police. Long story short, this man had been getting into the home via a doggy door. They didn't have a dog, but didn't bother to secure it, and he'd been living in a tent in the foresty area behind their home for months to creep on her. They found a ton of surveillance footage of her sleeping and pieces of her clothes and stuff. If I recall correctly, this happened somewhere in Alabama, most likely mid-2000s. That's creepy. Creepy. My question is, like, why? She called her boyfriend, then her mom and dad, then the police. You do that reverse. Call the police first, then the mom and dad, then the boyfriend.
Probably the better thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, this one is from Bubble Bass. When I was 7, I was raking rocks in my aunt's front yard, and a beat-up pickup truck pulled up. The man got out, fiddled with something under the hood, and then closed it. He asked me, "Hey, kid, do you know how to pop a clutch?" He's trying to get kidnapped. Spending my childhood on the farm, I did indeed know how. "Yes," I responded. "Give me a hand real quick," he said. So I started walking towards his truck. At the last second, my mom called out to me from the garage, and I turned around to see what she wanted. I heard the door slam, the truck start, and he drove away. That memory never really came up until one day, about 30 years later, I jump up after laying down to go to bed, when out of nowhere, it came back and it hit me. This guy was trying to kidnap me. What the fuck? What bullet did I dodge? I mean, have you ever had a memory come back and you just get scared? I mean, scared over the memory. I was shaking for at least half an hour over it. It still freaks me out thinking about it.
This is from the philosopher KMH. A guy that I was good friends with had a party one night, and he called to invite me over. It was me and my wife's first day off together in a while, and our daughter was 2 years old. I mentioned it to my wife, and my daughter said, "No, don't go, Dad." Of course, I can't resist that, so I stayed home, and we had a good night. Yeah, that's pick your battle. Like, wives, and it's like your wife and your first day off, and you're like, "I'm going to go party." Not a good thing. My friend, however, had the worst night of his life. His party was going good. Everything was fine, even though there was a friend of a friend there who no one really knew. Turns out the stranger had been smoking PCP, decided to start killing people.
Oh my God.
He took a butcher knife and slashed 3 people's throats. My friend's wife threw their kids out of a 2-story window and jumped out herself, took them into the woods, and called the police. All 3 people died. Jesus Christ. The police found the guy walking down the side of the road covered in blood and incoherent. He had no idea what he just did, so he said. What really pisses me off is he was such a good guy. He's a big biker-looking teddy bear. Never was an asshole to anyone and always did what was the right thing. We worked together and hit it off from day one, always ready with a joke and a smile. Maybe not going saved my life, or maybe I could have helped. That weighs on me 20 years later. The fact that some little POS destroyed the lives of 3 good families that he didn't even know really pisses me off, and I hope he rots in prison and gets his ass kicked every day.
Oof.
Rest in peace, Blaine. You were a good man. Jesus Christ, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. Don't do PCP.
Drugs. Don't do drugs. Like how I go like generalize. You're like, don't do that drug. Don't do PCP.
Don't do that
specific drug.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of
Fleet
drugs
does
out
not
there.
condone PCP.
Got Advil, ibuprofen. This one is from Smoky Cave. A few years ago, a dude dressed up as a clown came to a camp I went to. Apparently, he broke into a cabin I was staying in and stole stuff from some people in my cabin. He took primarily cash and a phone that kids had on them. I saw him there, but I was too young, I didn't think much of it. Apparently, they couldn't find him because of the gloves he wore and his full body costume. All of the kids had their stuff replaced, but the craziest part is a few of us heard a scream that could not have come from the grown man that came from the road. That dude was weird, and it was terrifying as 11-year-old.
What?
Jesus, bro.
That's weird. I don't think I told you this. On Halloween, we were coming back from my in-laws, right? Random story, but thinking of clowns. On our road to our house, on the side of the street, I shit you not, was a guy dressed in like the coolest Pennywise costume I've ever seen, holding red balloons.
Oh,
dude,
wow.
it was creepy. Like, I was like, do we turn around and get a picture? This thing was nuts. And he's just sitting there waving to all the cars.
If your name is Georgie, leave.
Yeah, you're going to lose an arm. Okay, this is from Deleted. I used to work at a cave. I wonder what that's like, working at a cave. It was a tourist attraction. Very busy place. The tour guides used to tell people all the different ways that people had died in the cave. Welcome to the cave tour. This person died this way. That person died this way. If you look to the left, someone died there.
He died from a stalagmite.
You, sir, you're standing on somewhere that someone died.
He died from a stalactite.
Stalactite, stalagmite. What's the difference? One is up and one is down. The script was changed in the late 90s to make the tour more G-rated. I wonder why. But needless to say, all of us employees still know how many people had died there since the 1890s. It was always one of those things that we joked about amongst us. Anyways, one evening after closing, some of the tour guides were messing with a brand new tour guide, told her to go sweep the cave. Remember, this is a cave, so I thought this was a practical joke. Nope. They told her to make sure she got back in an area that was quite a ways back from the entrance. Once they saw that she was back there, they started swinging the extremely large, thick, bank vault-like door shut. They managed to get it shut while she was still making a beeline for the entrance. They then turned off the cave lights from the outside. That's just fucking rude. I told the guys to let her out quickly and not prolong the torture. We had all heard the faint screaming and banging on the vault. Then it suddenly stopped. We all quickly rushed to get the door open, flipped the lights on, but she wasn't anywhere to be seen. She was tucked away behind a corner, quite a ways from the entrance, farther than we thought that she could make it in the dark. She was sitting on the ground, rocking back and forth with her arms wrapped around her knees, hyperventilating. After we got her somewhat calmed down, all she said was, "Someone grabbed me." She was never the same after that night. She was a bubbly, outgoing person before and a quiet, standoffish person after. Jeez, I wonder why. We could never get her to talk more about it, and she quit soon after.
This one is from M945050. I was driving back to school from Boise to Eugene after spring break when I picked up a hitchhiker. He was happy and friendly when I first picked him up, but as the miles wore on, his personality changed from friendly to domineering and nasty. I stopped to get gas and go to the bathroom, and he said to leave the keys in the car when I was getting out, which immediately told me to take them with me. Like, what? Leave the keys in here.
It's a different world now, man.
When I went to go pay for the gas, he was waiting and told the cashier to add a pack of cigarettes to my bill. Like, who does he think he is? And I said that I wasn't paying for any cigarettes. Then before we got back to the car, I told him to find another ride. He got back in and told me to shut the fuck up and drive, and neither one of us said anything for the next 50 miles. He didn't
What the fuck?
Anyways, then he almost exploded and said, "God damn it, motherfucker, I need a smoke." I told him that the only way he was going to get one was to go find a new ride, which shut him up for a while. After we passed by Salem, he started to get agitated and told me that he had to be in L.A. by tomorrow. I told him that he wouldn't have any problem catching a ride around Eugene. Around 10 miles from the exit, he told me that I was going to drive him to L.A. or else.
This fucking guy.
He's entitled.
What would you do?
I would just be like, hey, I need to stop for a snack, and then just call the cops.
Yeah.
Around 5 miles past Eugene exit, a state police car was passing us, and he said to slow down and let him go. I sped up, cut in front of him, and started hitting my brakes, and he was screaming at me to stop it and let him go by. He pulled behind us and turned on his lights. The guy was shaking, and he told me not to do or say anything stupid. As soon as my car was stopped, I grabbed my keys and jumped out and ran back to the police car.
Oh, bad idea.
Yeah, could get shot.
Bad idea.
And told him what was going on with my passenger. He waited for another car to show up, and then they took him out of my car at gunpoint. When they were walking him back to the car, he screamed that he should have killed me earlier. Like, oh, yeah, You showed me. A few days later, the policeman called me to get some more details about what happened from the time I picked him up until he was arrested. He then told me that he had 3 warrants out for his arrest for 3 murders that they knew of, and had I not did what I did to get their attention, that they didn't have any doubt that I would have been another one. He was extradited to Texas for 2 of the murders, and is currently on death row. I had a nightmare about that day for years after that. That's crazy. That's a good story. I like that.
It's one of those ones like you just... Why would you pick up a hitchhiker? I never would.
I did once.
I know you did. You're fucking crazy.
One time I didn't, and then the guy was like jumping up and down like mad. I'm like, well, I'm really glad.
Because didn't you slow down?
No.
I thought you said you slowed down
Maybe
on that guy.
I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
You like slowed down, he almost grabbed the handle, and you sped off.
I don't feel like I did that.
They flipped him off. All right, this is from Trawway. A woman my mom is friends with came home to find her entire family brutally murdered. Ooh. Her parents, grandparents, and both of her older siblings, plus her baby sister. She grabbed her younger brother and ran to the neighbor's house. The police arrived. Turns out that her oldest brother had killed them all and was waiting on his sister and brother to come home to kill them too. The only thing that saved her life is that she stopped before she went upstairs, which is where he was lying in wait with an axe. To this day, every 3 years, she has to bring all of his letters where he is still threatening to kill them to the parole board to prevent his release. Jesus Christ. Story number 2. My cousin's neighbor came over to visit and was acting off. First, her house was 3 miles away, on a dirt road, and she had walked over in the middle of a hot summer. This wasn't normal for her. She was jittery and kept mentioning that she hadn't heard from her husband all day, and she was afraid to go home. My cousin's mom came in the room and pulled my cousin to the side and told her to keep the neighbor talking. She was calling the police. Cousin's mom had noticed a chunk of what looked like hamburger meat on the woman's dress and thought that she might be in some kind of shock and that something might be wrong at home. The police arrive and take her outside. She continues to be jittery, not making a lot of sense. They check her house. They find her husband's recliner soaked in blood with a trail leading up the stairs. On the stairs, they find fingers. At the top of the stairs, in the bedroom, they find her husband dead. She had killed him with a butcher knife because he was taking up too much of her time. As she left, he wasn't dead yet and had started up the stairs to get to the phone. She attacked him again and cut off several fingers. He went still, and she believed he was dead and took off. He almost made it to the phone. Makes me happy that I have normal neighbors.
Yeah. This one is from Izzy72004.
Is he or isn't he?
Maybe.
Trigger warning.
Yeah, trigger warning. On January 30th, 2016, a 43-year-old Chinese woman got into an elevator in her apartment building. Then some maintenance workers shut off the power on the lift as it had been having some glitches. All they did to check if anybody was inside was knock on the door, which is incredibly fucking stupid, as how would she have heard if the elevator was moving, and what if it was a deaf person inside? The maintenance worker went away from work for Chinese New Year. Then, when they returned on March 1st, 2016, they found the poor woman's dead body in the elevator. Her family had reported her missing. The only name she was identified as was the surname Wu. Her cause of death was announced as starvation. The inside of the lift had scratch marks all over the walls. Her hands were mangled from several attempts to escape. The story was so fucking sad and scary to me that I almost didn't think it was real. But horribly, it was. What a dreadful way to go. That is sad.
Okay, this is from CCW Throwaway 360. One of my best friends growing up had an aunt that was the sweetest, most generous woman you could possibly know. She started dating a man that fell in love with her because of how sweet and how kind she was. After a month or so of being together, he accused her of being too nice to other people. So he bludgeoned her until she was unconscious and cut her heart out of her chest while she was still alive.
Fuck.
Good God.
Just too nice.
You're just way too nice to people. You need to start being an asshole. He thought that it was the worst example of sheer disrespect that she would exhibit kindness towards other people when she was in a committed relationship. He believed that he owned all of the good that she had to give, and by being nice to people that weren't him, she may as well have been cheating with the whole town. He killed her for being the person he knew her to be when they started dating. The fact that people like him exist is terrifying to me.
What a psycho.
Don't be nice to people, man. You're going to get your fucking heart cut out.
This is why I'm a dick all the time. This one's from a rabid dingo.
Whoa.
Helios Airways Flight 522. It was a flight from Larnaca, Cyprus to Prague, Czech Republic, on 14th August 2005. The plane took off normally and climbed to altitude, but shortly afterwards, the pilots radioed in asking for help solving a technical problem, as an alarm was going off in the cockpit. After a few messages with the ground in which they seemed dazed and confused, they went silent. and the plane continued on and eventually began circling on autopilot. As it could not raise the aircraft on radio, a pair of fighters were scrambled to intercept and investigate. What they found was that the plane was circling with no signs of life in the cabin, and the pilots slumped at the controls. Eventually, as they watched a lone flight attendant enter the cockpit and sat at the controls. However, they were unable to speak to him on the radio, and he seemed unable to communicate. Shortly afterwards, the engines ran out of fuel, and the plane spiraled down to the ground, crashing on the hillside in Greece. There were 121 people on board. What had happened was the pressurization system had been fully turned off by maintenance to investigate a door problem, and the pilots failed to turn it back on when they ran through the 3 separate checklists. They radioed asking for help. They were already suffering from oxygen deprivation, and in their confusion, they were unable to understand advice to check the pressure switch. They passed out soon afterwards, and the plane continued on autopilot. The scary part is, the lone flight attendant, he was Andreas Prodromo, a former Special Forces soldier and a trained pilot, but one who did not know how to fly a 737. Also on board was his girlfriend, who was also a flight attendant for Helios. He managed to remain conscious by using a portable oxygen bottle, and there is evidence that he brought the oxygen bottle to the cockpit and strapped it into one of the pilots in an attempt to resuscitate them. To no avail. By the time he realized that something was terribly wrong and was able to make it into the cockpit, they were likely never going to wake up. It was him that tried to take control of the plane just before it ran out of fuel. The cockpit voice recorder also captured him making 5 separate Mayday calls to no effect.
Damn.
As he turned to the wrong frequency and out of range of the receiver.
That's crazy. 5 Mayday calls?
Yeah. To be the only one conscious on a plane of 120 silent people, including the woman that you love, knowing that they might still be alive and that you are the only hope, head swimming from the lack of oxygen and barely able to function as you struggle with the equivalent of being above the peak of Mount Everest, is utterly horrifying to me, especially when the engines flame out and it becomes apparent that there was no hope. The last known action of Prodromo was to turn the plane away from Athens and towards an uninhabited area. Damn.
Good Lord.
Damn.
This is from Battery Cat. The story definitely isn't the scariest in the comments, but another woman fell in love with my great-grandfather, and he was already married to my great-grandmother. So she came to their home with a gun while he was at work. When my great-grandmother opened the door, she shot her point blank. However, my grandmother, then 3-ish years old, was behind her watching everything. I guess she concluded that she wouldn't remember, or wouldn't be believed, or simply couldn't shoot a child, being a mother herself, and thankfully didn't shoot her. This was around 1930. Forensics weren't very advanced. No evidence was left. The case goes cold. Life continued on, and eventually the woman, named Lorraine, got what she wanted. She convinced my great-grandfather to marry her. She had 2 children from a previous marriage, both older than my grandmother. I don't know what happened to her first husband, honestly. She told everyone exactly who murdered her mother, but no one believed her. Who would believe a kid who obviously misses her mother and is having trouble adjusting to her new family? People just thought that she demonized her stepmother for replacing her mom, or maybe imagined it. It's an easy conclusion to reach. And so, years and years pass. She grows up with her mother's murderer in her own house, sleeping rooms away. And Lorraine knows what she knows. She appears like the perfect housewife, swooping in and caring for the grieving father and child. My grandmother grows up tormented by her and her children. There was obviously favoritism. The stepkids are spoiled, and she's the black sheep of the family. She moves out and marries my grandfather, the first chance she gets. She moves on and has children of her own, 5 boys. Lorraine became ill and finally landed on her deathbed. And there, she finally confessed to the truth and told everyone what she had done. I guess she was worried about the state of her soul. 57 years had passed since the murder. 16 since my great-grandfather had passed.
Ain't no confession helping you, lady.
Yeah.
That's
he never
crazy.
knew the truth. No documents were ever officially amended to state that she was the murderer. As far as I know, the authorities considered the case cold, still, almost 100 years later. Drives me nuts that my grandmother always knew, and even after she was an adult, people just said, "Oh, you had an active imagination as a child." There's no way. To live with that knowledge for so long and have no one in the world on your side, your whole family against you, that's what scares me. That is fucking crazy, man.
Crazy
Like, no,
chick.
this lady here murdered my mom in front of me, and now she's pretending to be my new mom.
This one is from Warming. The origin and meaning of the slang term cow, korova, in Russian gulags. Back in the USSR, a lot of forced labor camps, gulags, were in Siberia because it's huge and cold, and escaping from it is basically a death sentence. Also, Stalin imprisoned a fuck ton of people for a variety of reasons, usually BS ones, and often whole families were sent because one person committed a crime. These camps were also usually poorly stocked, so people had little food, water, tools to do their labor, or proper clothing. So these gulags were often packed full of starving people who wanted freedom. They quickly discovered the best way to escape was in groups. It's easier, safer, and smarter to do. But what's really disgusting is what they did to escape. See, Siberia is cold and has very little food. The native tribes who live there often subsist purely by following migratory caribou who eat lichen that grows under the snow. There's nothing really to eat but caribou. But what if you're a nearly naked prisoner? Well, you eat each other. Groups would escape with designated cows, men who were purely allowed along because they would be eaten later. These guys, of course, didn't know that they were designated rations. Oh my God, that's dark. Who knows how many people were eaten after they escaped the camp? How many people ate someone and then got caught escaping? That's nuts. Gross.
A lot of Wendigos being made. Okay, this is from Morphiantra. Personal story. When I was 10, I regularly attended a choir club for kids. One day I was picked up by my dad to drive me home. I was confused about it, as it was always my mom who did, but did not think much of it until halfway through the drive. My dad began to mumble about how sorry he was and how I would never see him again. More than a bit frightened and confused at that point, I kept asking what he had meant, but he wouldn't say. Until we were home, but he did not leave the car, and instead urged me to get out. Finally, he told me I would not see him again because he will be dead very soon for what he did, and that the police would answer me. What the fuck? After he practically kicked me out of the car, I rushed home, but no one was there. But I found the door open and a puddle of blood on the floor. The police was nearby and explained what had happened. My dad was obsessively jealous and had found a pack of old condoms in the cupboard, so he drew the conclusion that my mom must have cheated on him.
The purse was full of condoms and gum.
Gave it kick ass and chew bubble gum. Never mind the fact that we only recently moved into this apartment and they could have been left by previous tenants, or the fact that he controlled my mom's very step and never let her go anywhere alone. The police took me to the hospital where my mom, luckily alive, was being treated. My dad had smashed her skull in with a full wine bottle. The only reason she survived was because my little brother, who was 7 at the time, intervened. If it weren't for him, my dad would have killed my mom in a fit of jealousy. When he said that I would not see him again, he meant that. He had planned on killing himself shortly after dropping me off. He did not succeed, and police managed to get him into a mental ward. This, to this date, is the scariest thing that had ever happened to me, but I keep thinking of my brother all the time. To witness your own mom being beaten half dead by your dad. We both suffered extreme mental trauma from this event later down the line, but somehow turned into decent people. I never really told him how grateful I am that he was there, but I think that I really, really should. It's not another story, but I keep seeing this pop up a lot, the Nutty Putty Cave thing. That's a scary fucking story. Getting trapped upside down in a cave? No thanks.
Eyeballs pop out.
Oh, a lot more happens than that, man.
This one is from ECV82. When I was a baby, sometime between 1982 and 1987, my mom got a knock on the door from a man stating my dad spoke to him and asked him to see her about enrolling in health insurance. Odd was that he was carrying a violin or guitar case, not a briefcase. My mom knew this was a lie because A, my dad would not have told her, and B, he referred to my mom as Mary, which is her nickname, and she was wearing a gold chain with her nickname on it. My mom told him to leave, that he had the wrong address. He asked to borrow the phone, and she said we had just moved in and hadn't connected the phone line yet. That night, my mom tells my dad, and he says he never asked anyone. A week later, he was caught and was charged with various murders of women in the area. This was Miami, Florida.
Hey.
Damn.
Florida, man. We're going to end with this story from Emergency Board 4601. In 2016, I met a girl that I ended up dating for 16 months that knew how to access red rooms on the dark web. Oh. The first night I met her, as we were going to bed in my dorm, she pulled one up and I watched in horror as a guy murdered his boyfriend. The boyfriend was tied down on a bed with a cloth bag on his head, passed out by a lot of alcohol or something. He started waking up when the guy started sawing off his arms with a hacksaw, screaming in agony. Then the guy proceeded to cut off the boyfriend's legs. By that point, the victim was already passed out or possibly dead from loss of blood. The guy then cut off a slice of meat from his now deceased boyfriend's right butt cheek and fed it to his golden lab. It was so disturbing to see the dog greedily take it. That girl threatened to kill me multiple times, but I never believed her. One time, when she was having a panic attack, she tried stabbing me with a box cutter, but I grabbed at her wrist and the knife went into her calf. That relationship was wild.
That's bizarre.
I like the first comment. So she showed you actual murder and told you she would murder you, and you still dated her for a while.
That's bizarre. Yeah, that's bizarre, man. You gotta have higher standards than that.
That's ridiculous.
You threaten to murder me twice, I'll break up with you.
Well, now that we've ended on a huge high note, thank you all for joining us here for these true scary stories found online. And a huge shout out to our paid supporters of the show: Modelo Time, Cleat Meat, Claytor, Lord of Soup, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Devin, Laura, Conklin family, and Lou. Again, your constant support is absolutely amazing. As we said earlier, we have purchased the camera, so we're going to get all comfortable in using that and editing that, and we're only 21 subs away from venturing out to Nevada in the Clown Motel.
Yep. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.